Gillen. I'm a faculty member over in Family, Youth, and Community Sciences here at UF. And then I'm a faculty affiliate of the Institute for Child Welfare at FSU. I'm a TBRI practitioner, which is trust-based relational intervention, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. And then here at UF, I teach courses in personal finance and children and trauma. So kind of two different areas. Yeah, it was like Thursday I went and talked to 2 classes about children and trauma, brain development, and all that stuff. Yesterday I was in 2 other classes guest lecturing about personal finance. Yeah. Yeah, interesting days. So to give you a little more background about myself, I've been in Florida since 2011. Where's this accent from? It's not a Florida accent, is it?
Alabama? Georgia.
You know, I'm kind of hitting around it.
Arkansas.
No, that one's way off.
No, South Carolina. No, Georgia? No, we said that.
Go a little more. Kentucky.
Kentucky.
Yeah, specifically I was at the University of Kentucky for 13 years before coming. I was assistant dean for finance in the College of Social Work there. So I did my Ph.D. work through their employee education program. Well, I worked there for free. It didn't cost me anything. And then I did a graduate certificate in applied statistics, and one in gerontology.
Wow.
Yeah, and in social work there, the child welfare system is different than Florida. Here it's privatized. There it's still public, so it's all run by the state. They don't contract anything out to, like here we have Partnership for Strong Families. So as the university, we actually had the contract for training all the foster and adoptive parents for the state of Kentucky. So I got to work real close with all of that stuff and oversee a lot of that. And then in addition to all the stuff I do here at UF, I'm also a foster and adoptive mom. And then I'm a guardian ad litem volunteer as well. So these are my 2 babies. This picture was taken in March, and this one was taken just a couple weeks ago. And I'm like, my goodness, they have grown so much just in 6 months. It's crazy. So this is my son, Max. He just turned 1 at the end of September, and my daughter, Mia, is going to be 3 in November. So we've been foster parents for, going on 4 years, getting ready to start on year 5 in a couple months. So we've had 11 kiddos in our home, 3 newborns, and this is 2 of the newborns that we've had in our home, up to age 11. We've had some sibling groups, and I've literally walked into Shan's 3 times with empty car seats and walked out with babies. Yeah. That's not how that's supposed to happen, is it? No. I've literally come off the floor of teaching with Partnership calling. We have a newborn being discharged. Can you go get them? Again, not how all of that's supposed to happen. So along this journey, it's made me kind of take a step back and kind of look at how I was approaching some things. So I do a lot of work now with biological parents. I do a lot of work with foster and adoptive parents as well. And thinking kind of some of the judgments that I brought to some of that were not so great in the beginning. Some of it was set up by some agency stuff as well. But, thinking how we approach things and, kind of being more mindful about it, which goes into what we're going to be talking about today, I'm definitely way more mindful than I was, say, 7 years ago. Thinking about what we bring to relationships and, kind of the baggage that we bring, because we've all got it. And it truly does influence how we interact with others. So, for example, thinking about kids who've entered the foster system, they've experienced some type of trauma. I have joked that a partnership has called me and said, no, the baby's healthy. When I'm asking, okay, was there any drug exposure, yada, yada, yada. Oh, no, it's a healthy baby. And I'm like, you need to quit saying it's a healthy baby. There is no healthy baby coming into foster care. Or they wouldn't be coming into foster care if there wasn't some type of trauma going on, right? And a lot of what I do now is teach about in utero trauma and all of the stuff that happens. And we'll actually talk a little bit about brain development and stuff like that, and how that can, when we start to have more information and become more knowledgeable, how that can affect our interactions. Go back to this slide. this is really what I live by, and this is what I think we do. We do the best we can until we know better, and then we do better. So if somebody never tells us how to parent, never gives us any tips, it's hard for us to know what to do. And, there are some really bad cases of abuse. There really are. But a lot of it is more that people just don't know what to do, or they're overwhelmed, or a little bit of both going on. Sometimes a lot of both going on. And, thinking about resources and, all of that kind of stuff. And how that looks when you actually have access to more. And you've got the money to go drive to the grocery store and buy your groceries and, all of that kind of stuff. And thinking about the different opportunities that come just from those resources alone. And again, just being mindful of all of that. So how can mindful awareness and mindful caregiving influence the way we interact with others? What do you all think?
Genuine connection.
Genuine connection.
Like, being present with someone is probably the greatest thing you can do.
Yeah. What else?
I remember thinking when I was going to be my first time having be a mother, I wanted to do it right, and my sister, who's here, and another one, we would say mindful. We would mindfully raise them, and I guess what we did without realizing is we did the best we knew how until we knew better. We did it, but it was I'm trying to put the right words to it, but mindful, deliberate.
Deliberate,
A conscious awareness of what we're doing.
And how did you learn those things that you thought you should be deliberate about?
Well, I read a lot, so I read a lot of things, but I think, for me, I was a teacher first, and that helped a lot.
Okay, so there's some education there too.
Hands-on
experience.
And you begin to learn that if you say you're going to do something, you better do it, or you have completely lost ever your word meaning something. Things like that you learn sort of the hard way, and then you have to say, oh look, I realize if the kids are old enough to understand, or if they're not, it doesn't matter yet, they'll forget and can start it.
Yeah, especially if little, don't find something you cannot do.
I better say, and I also I remember learning that you give them choices, either this or this, so all of this was just mindful stuff I tried to pick up, but anyway.
Yeah.
I think the way to be mindful, the word I associate with mindfulness is maybe being empathetic towards others. And I think the only way to really learn to be empathetic is to maybe observe the extremes. Maybe you see something that's really, really great. And I'm too young to be a parent. I'm a college student. It's my first year in undergrad. So, I see things growing up where maybe my friend's parents did something so amazing. I'm like, wow, I wish my parents were like that. Or maybe the extreme on the other end, where I really need to learn to do the best because I'm looking at stuff like this, because I need to be better than this. You know what I mean? So I think the only way to really develop that kind of expertise, and the only way to get better and to gain that experience, is to kind of judge yourself based on others and develop yourself into the best out of all the experiences you've experienced.
Anybody else? Yeah.
So what I've stumbled on just forever is just slowing down. And really slowing down the mind, slowing down the body, and just going back to some basics and asking some fundamental questions as opposed to trying to focus on the other person.
Taking kind of that step back and being able to look at that big picture before you actually react to something, right? So when we started this foster care journey, like I said, I've grown a lot. And the first thoughts that used to come to my head when I would read some of these shelter orders that we get that shows, why kids have been removed, why on earth would somebody do something like that? What on earth? I would never do that. Well, that was me being judgmental. People don't need my judgments, right? Yeah, they need me to try to help them and help them try to figure out, what's going on and, okay, kind of what happened here. What happened within that. So a lot of what I talk about with this is from a parenting standpoint, but this is for any type of relationship, really. If you think about relationships with your friends, your own parents, significant others, all of this kind of flows within that and how we interact with others. So before I can be a good caregiver, a good friend or anything, I've got to be able to recognize all the stuff that I bring to the table, which is hopefully a lot of positives, but there's other stuff too that I've got to think about and be much more aware about. So when we had a 9-year-old come to our home, it was him and his 4-year-old sister. This was back in, 4 years ago or so. It was our second placement. They were with us about 6 months. First day he comes into the door, first time in our house ever. He had never seen us before. They were actually in another home that didn't care for a while, and they were separated, so we were able to bring them back together as siblings, which was a good thing. But he comes into my house and he sits down in the recliner and he just kind of looks at me and says, "What's the rules in this house?" I'm like, "Oh, they didn't teach me that in pray training." Nobody told me I'm going to have rules here, or a list of rules. So note to self, you need rules. We don't have biological children, so never thought about it like that. I'm like, well, we're nice to everybody. We don't hurt anyone. He was wanting control, wanting to understand. So, you talked about choices. That's big. When you think about that kind of stuff, offering, choices and schedules and telling kids what's going on. It's the same thing with other relationships and stuff. Being very mindful, being very aware. I'm thinking about time, stuff like that. We all have stuff going on, but being able to connect. The other thing I learned about myself through this journey is I am very planful. Like right today, I want to know who's coming to Thanksgiving in 2021. Not 2018, not 2019, but 2021. Yeah, and already a couple years ago, I planned for 2018 for Thanksgiving. How did that fare for me? Not very well. I may have 3 more people, over Thanksgiving night that were not in my house before. So, thinking about that too. The other thing I learned about myself through this is I'm very, and I'm still, when I'm very work-oriented and all this, I function with lists. And I like to stay in the lines. I like for stuff to be very predictable. I like to check stuff off. So that same little 9-year-old, we're getting ready for school one morning, and I'm like, "Okay, did you brush your teeth? Did you brush your hair? Did you wash your face? Need you to put your shoes on? Did you get your homework? Okay, come on, we're going to be late for the bus." He's like, "You sound like a drill sergeant," because I can assure you it probably wasn't in this tone of voice. I was like, wow, I really do. And what do you think that did for him?
Stress.
Yeah, it just made anxiety go up to here. That wasn't helping him at all. And then I didn't feel like he was doing what he was supposed to be doing, so my anxiety's going up to here, versus if I would have just took a step back and kind of looked at it through that different lens, which I did get there. But, really thinking about that, being very mindful of what we bring to relationships and all that. So I was raised by a single mother, raised in poverty in Kentucky, Bath County. It's a very small county. The dropout rate is higher than the graduation rate at that time. Yeah, there was not very many people in our graduating class overall. It's kind of right on the foothills of Appalachia. So my mom ended up graduating nursing school the year I graduated high school. So after that, it got better. She's actually since retired from the state of Kentucky as a nurse, and she moved to, we live in Ocala, and she lives within 5 minutes of me, and she moved there in April. So, things did get a lot better, but there's a lot of stuff that I learned from growing up that influenced what I do today. And so when I was doing the TBRI practitioner training, I had to go through a whole attachment interview. And one thing I learned when they were asking me questions about memories from childhood, I don't have hardly any. That affects my attachment style to kids today, to how I interact with my spouse today. Yeah, I don't have a lot. And I'm like, okay, this is starting to freak me out. So I look at pictures and I'm like, yeah, I remember that. But do I really remember from the picture? Or do I really remember the memory? So again, and that's just stuff that I learned, within the last few years. That influences my relationships. So, thinking about that as well. Thinking about, my big one is tone, eye contact, nurturing eyes, the voice. I've got to think about that, be very mindful of it. Like I said, when I was the drill sergeant, I can assure you the voice was not this nice. Yeah. My husband's voice is very deep, and he can, get pretty loud sometimes, but not realize he's actually doing that. So we have to constantly remind each other to kind of check your voice, check your eyes. And I'm like, okay, you don't need to go there with that. So it's good to have somebody who can, call that out in you. And the same thing with our friendships, all of that kind of stuff, when you think about it from that angle. Somebody that can be like, okay, you need to tone it back a little, or you need to do this. Our other big one is you need to eat.
So in working with the families that you're working with, like some families don't have support, don't have anybody to be there to be like, hey, it's a little too far, put it back a little. What do you recommend, in the work that you're doing with some of the families?
Yeah, so self-regulation skills. Helping to work with families to develop that. So I actually go into schools and do trauma-informed classroom trainings. And then I've got a parent group that I'm working with out at Archer where we do, it's coffee, and I just come in and do parenting tips and jeans and a t-shirt and stuff, and we just talk about stuff. And, stay as long as they want to stay, and whoever wants to come can come and stuff. But it's teaching them the self-regulation skills. So they can then recognize when they're starting to get a little anxious, to get a little overwhelmed, what I need to do, so then they can in turn work with their kids and teach their kids those skills. Because again, it goes back to that first slide, you're doing the best you know how to do. If nobody's ever taught you these skills, how on earth can we expect people to do it? Same thing with our teachers. They may have an angry parent come in. And like I said, everybody has stuff that they're bringing with us. And what we know, are you all familiar with adverse childhood experiences, ACEs? So we know that is very much intergenerational. So if you got kids who've experienced trauma, 9 times out of 10, the parents have experienced trauma, and possibly the grandparents and so on. So you think about, you're having a parent-teacher conference with little Johnny's mom, and little Johnny's mom is getting upset too. So, how do we kind of back off of that and work on building those skill sets within those families, to put in more buffers, to put in more protective factors, and all of that for families. Other comments? Yeah.
Well, I think sometimes though, we can't always teach the self-regulation. We have to show it,
Yep.
act it, because that sometimes, is such it will make them angry. And maybe first with people that are difficult, just get them to trust you. Get them
That relationship, that connection.
You like them. I mean, whatever that takes for me, I pray a lot, but to be able to see them in a light that is who they could be, who they want to be, I guess, and so that you can have that feeling, so that they can sense it, that it's true, and then build up a relationship so that you can maybe help teach them.
It's a lot of modeling.
Modeling
Appropriate behaviors and stuff like that too. Because like I said, a lot of folks have not had any experience with this. Nobody's ever even taken the time to do some of this with them and to help them work through, some of this. So we definitely want to be conscious of thinking about whatever role it is we're looking at, but how did we get into that role? So if I think about my parenting role, like I said, we don't have biological children. We chose the route of foster care. Knowing going the route of foster care that we're in there for the long haul with families, the ultimate goal is reunification. Now in our case, if that couldn't happen, we were open in some cases to adopt. And like I said, we did adopt 2 children, but the goal is to make families healthy again and to get them back to those birth families and stuff. So like I said, I learned a lot about going into that and have really grown within that. I think it's helped me a lot within other relationships as well. Even with my students, trying to extend more grace when they tell me I didn't get to this assignment, something was going on. It may not be a documented excusable absence by UF, but it's a pretty good excuse in most cases. But if I wanted to just be hard, be judgmental, It would be very rigid, very set in stone versus trying to work with folks. And then thinking about those emotions and those feelings and how they can really influence the role. You know, when you think about it from a caregiving perspective, it might not just be caregiving for kids. Is anybody in here caregiving for parents? Yeah. That can be a big stressor as well. And when you think about how you entered into that role and what kind of relationship you had with that person to begin with. It may be someone you love dearly, and it may be somebody who wasn't so nice to you in childhood. So how that influences that relationship and what caregiving looks like. It may be, okay, I'm not going to directly provide the hands-on care, but I'm going to coordinate it. I'm going to help them through insurance stuff. Maybe I'm going to pay for some extra time for a nurse to come in, you know, stuff like that. So, you know, when you think about caregiving, you know, think about it from that broader perspective. And then think about, too, as we kind of go through life, you know, thinking about like a work day. Just a typical work day is 8 to 5, right? What time do you leave to go to work if you're working 8 to 5? In my case, I can't find parking at 8 o'clock on campus. So I'm here by 7:15 if I want a parking spot usually. Sometimes you can roll in about 7:45, but definitely not on the first day of classes. So let's say I get here about 7:15. That means I've left my house about 6:30, because like I said, I live in Ocala. If I work to 5, which lots of times I'm doing stuff in the evenings, because that's when people can come talk to me about parenting and, you know, stuff like that, because they're working too. Best case, I'm getting home by 6. That's 12 hours I have been gone. When do I have time to connect with anybody in my household? Yeah. So thinking about, you know, being very purposeful when we do have the time. So what I am in a very bad habit of at home is, and if I'm not very purposeful about it, I'm checking UF email and responding to students when I should be responding to my kiddos. So when I go home, that does not come out of my bag now until my kids are in bed. Now, short of like my mother calling or the phone ringing, I'll answer it depending on who it is. But it's not in my hands, and that's being very mindful, being very aware, and very purposeful in what I'm doing. So like I said, there's not a huge amount of time left to connect. You know, when kiddos are in bed, anywhere from 7 to 9 o'clock, and you don't get home at 6 o'clock, you gotta do bash, gotta get them fed, get them in the pajamas, you know, all of that kind of stuff. So then you layer that on with somebody who might have other caregiving responsibilities for a parent, and there's only so much time. Now, we are blessed that my husband stays home full time with my kids. So they're connecting with one of us all of the time. So my daughter's got some health issues. She couldn't do daycare, so he quit a couple years ago to stay home. And then some key factors to consider. Like I said, really noticing your own feelings, especially when you're in conflict. Again, that ability to take that step back and to really look at what's going on and to think about, why am I feeling that way? And even, you know, what could have happened to the other person that make them have a reaction like they're having? You know, what is actually going on? And we touched on this one, but really that learning to pause, to be able to put the brakes on, to take that step back, and think about what's really going on. Especially with the interactions with kids, this is particularly important. When you think about brain development and what kids, bless you, are realistically capable of doing, I think we as society, parents, educators, all of that, hold kids to very high standards that oftentimes they're not capable of doing. They're not developmentally there. To expect a 3-year-old to sit still for any length of time is not going to happen. And if that's your expectations, then what's going to happen when they don't? You're going to get frustrated as a parent. So thinking about kind of expectations within that, and when you're thinking about it from that relationship standpoint, listening very carefully to what's happening. So you think about the interaction with the 3-year-old who can't sit still in the restaurant after you've ordered food or whatever. You know, think about what that 3-year-old is really wanting to do. That's developmentally appropriate. They're wanting to move those little bodies and all of that kind of stuff. You know, thinking about it from an adult relation standpoint, listen to folks. Where are they coming from? How many of you go down, you're going down your hallway at work, sometimes you're going down the sidewalk, and you're kind of walking, you're passing somebody, and you say, hello, how are you? Anybody ever do that?
Mm-hmm.
The person's going the other way, they pray, say, I'm good, I'm fine, how are you? And you just keep going, right? Do you think they're really good? Are you really good when you say it? We don't take that time to stop and actually connect and to see what's going on with people. And I'll say, you know, it's great. Maybe you don't know them that well and you're just trying to be friendly and you're just trying to, you know, smile and go on. That's great to connect like that. But if somebody you really do actually know, that kind of stuff, we need to stop and do a better job of that. And to take the time to be able to talk and really think about what's going on. So there's lots of benefits of this. It's definitely made me more aware of my own feelings, my own thoughts, and challenged me to look at where I obtained some of those perceptions from. Like I said, a lot of it was growing up stuff, a lot of it based on experiences. But it allowed me to take that step back and to look at it, to really challenge it, to think about it. Definitely become more aware and responsive to your own actions, your own feelings, all of that kind of stuff, the needs, the thoughts. Being able to regulate your own emotions. Putting that pause button on and thinking, okay. And when you think about emotions, extend that more to physiological stuff as well. Thinking about food, hydration, sleep, all of that, because all of that plays with how we interact, how we approach stuff and everything too. Does anybody in here ever get hangry? I could be on the Snickers commercial, I kid you not, and my husband will stop me and he will say, you need to eat. My blood sugar gets all out of whack. It makes me get a very short temper. Yeah, so, you know, thinking about that, my almost 3-year-old likes to go, 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 go. We don't stop a lot. She doesn't quite know those hunger cues and that kind of stuff. But I, as an adult, need to know every 2 hours, she needs to have something to eat. So if we're going places and we're out, you know, in Target or whatever, you know, when was the last time she ate? And how is she acting? Because oftentimes I could have set her up for failure by not bringing snacks and all of that.
Protein.
Protein for bed is a good one too. You know, before you go to sleep, have some string cheese and a couple of pretzels to go with it. Get some protein in it. It can change how you wake up in the mornings. You know, have half of a peanut butter sandwich. You know, something like that. Some apple slices, you know, peanut butter dipping in it. Protein is huge. Hydration is huge. Do you know by the time you actually realize you are thirsty, you have lost 10% of your cognitive functioning? Yeah, by the time you just realize you're thirsty. I've got schools that are trying to help kids realize that and help them to become more aware of their body. And they're actually putting up little charts that have different colors of circles, and it shows the different colors of urine. And if you're this kind of dark color, you need to go get something to drink, and they'll come out and they'll be like, Miss Thompson, I'm really thirsty. The kids love that. But it's teaching them the regulation and the self-awareness and all of that. Plus, it's helping to make Miss Thompson's day much better because they're staying hydrated. They can better learn. They can better pay attention, you know, all of that kind of stuff. So when you stop and you think about this and you look at how your viewpoints, where they come from, how they're influencing others, it will definitely improve relationships. It definitely will. Definitely will help you take a step back. This one's huge. Stress, contagious. It really is. How I act and how my mood is influences who I'm with. And you get somebody who's very anxious and throw them in with a bunch of little kids, all that kind of stuff. You got anxious kids. Yeah, so again, this is getting at being purposeful, being mindful, trying to keep our self intact and really, understanding that self-awareness and be able to self-regulate ourselves. So the other day we were at the allergy clinic over here at UF. It's been about 3 weeks ago. My daughter was getting allergy testing done. They do the little things on your back. She did really, really good throughout. My husband was with us. He took her out to the waiting room. I was making another appointment. I come out there and she is playing with toys and another little girl. She's not ready to go. We're ready to go. I actually need to be back at work. They had picked me up and I had rode over with them and they were dropping me back at the office. Physically, I am bigger than her. I am stronger than her. My husband's even bigger than me. He's definitely bigger. We could have picked her up and we could have carted her out of there. We probably would have had some kicking and screaming and crying and people would have been staring at me. It wouldn't have been pretty, right? So instead of doing that, I sit down and we talked about what we're going to have to do, how long it's going to take and when we're going to get ready to do it. So giving her some transition time. And on top of that, when it was ready to go, I said, would you like to hop like a bunny out of here with Mommy? We hopped like bunnies out of there. Nasta got some strange looks, but there was not a tear shed, and we had fun. So thinking about relationships and interacting and all of that, anything we can do through play, even with adults, it disarms fear. You learn through play. And like I said, she was fine, got out to the van, put her in her car seat, everything's good. The other thing we do is march. I can get her to march out of places with me. I can even redirect her at home if she's getting ready to throw down over something. Do you want to march with Mommy? And we'll go marching. And that's given her some proprioceptive input. She's very sensory seeking too. And it's given her what she needs to kind of help her to regulate. And hopefully it's teaching her a good skill that eventually will click. She'll start to understand, I'm feeling this way, I need to do this. And like I said, she'll be 3 in November, but kind of, starting down that pathway early. I've got a friend who, he's now 8. When he starts to feel like he is dysregulated, he'll ask to go wash dishes. The son will. The warm water, it's not that he really wants to wash dishes, I assure you, but he'll go and he'll wash them, and it's the warm, soapy water, and that calms him. So, learning what calms us. And sometimes one way to help people figure some of that out is to get them a little dysregulated, to get them up and moving, and then to do something to help regulate them. So whether it's playing a game or whatever, and then doing some deep breathing, one thing that can help calm is what's called a magic mustache. There's a little divot right here that's actually a pressure point. That's a calming point, and kids love doing this. You make a little mustache and kind of push in on it and hold it for about 10 seconds. As you're doing that, you're breathing some. It's going to help to calm and help to reduce stress and anxiety. Another thing we do, because sometimes it's hard to teach kids how to do the deep breathing, and even with adults, you got to be able to show them. So having a bowl of something, like literally a pretend bowl. This works great for my almost 3-year-old. She loves to play pretend. She's always bringing me a pretend cake or something like that, or a pretend cookie. We're having pretend tea parties. But you got this, whether it's a bowl of Lucky Charms, whether it's a bowl of chocolate ice cream. In my case, I think broccoli cheddar soup sounds really good right now. And we're going to breathe that in. And oh, it smells so good. It smells so wonderful. It's just so cheesy. And I'm breathing in, and as I'm talking, it's coming back out. So just using, some simple things like that can help kids to be able to regulate and help us adults as well. And then really understanding the brain and how it develops. When you start to understand some of that, especially with kids, but even with our teenagers, stuff like that, we start to realize why they're actually doing some of the stuff they're doing versus you say, why on earth would you do that? Why didn't you think? Well, they didn't because it's not developed yet fully. Everybody hold up a hand for me. We're going to pretend that this is your brain going up your arm. It's going to be your spinal cord. Your wrist is going to be your brain stem. So this is going to be where a lot of your breathing stuff, your bodily functions, all of that's going to be coming out of this part of the brain, kind of the lower brain part. So when you think about a preemie, baby. They've not had a lot of that development. So they may have had underdeveloped lungs, they may have had underdeveloped eyes, vision problems, stuff like that. You think about that preemie being in the hospital. You think about what kind of touch that child has received. Has anybody had blood drawn or an IV lately? It's not the most pleasant thing in the world, is it? They don't mean to torture you though, but it is hurtful. So instead of getting the nurturing touch, they're getting that hurtful touch to begin with, and they don't know what to do with that really. They don't understand that it's medically necessary like we do when we go to donate blood, for example, when we're wanting to do it. So we got our brain. I want you to fold your thumb over. This is considered your amygdala part of your brain. This is your emotional brain. This is for your fear, your flight, your freeze, all of that kind of stuff is that. This is what happens when you stick your foot in your mouth and you say something and you're like, did I really say that out loud? You're operating down here. Anybody ever done that besides me? I'm not the only person. Fold your fingers over. This is the cortex of your brain. Think of your fingernails as the prefrontal cortex. This does not fully develop until about 21, 22 for women and the mid-20s for men. And then what happens when we get excited, when we get nervous, when we get angry, when we get anxious, sometimes we flip our lid and we go back to operating down here, especially if we don't have the self-regulation skills to be able to keep it intact and closed. I flip my lid as an adult. I get angry about stuff, but I have the ability to be able to self-regulate. Think about our kids. They don't have that full ability yet. And we've got to keep working with them, keep teaching them. If you've got adults, nobody's taught them those self-regulation skills, and if they have experienced a lot of trauma, like I said, that's very intergenerational, they're going to be operating down here a lot. Some of this has not fully developed for them. Trauma does a lot of horrible things to the brain. When you think about, let's pretend, I'm really not a jogger, but we'll go with I am. Let's say I'm going down this jogging trail. I saw a friend post this morning. She had jogged, well, she didn't say jog, she run 9 miles. And it was a great thing ever because, it was the fall weather, and I'm sitting here thinking, was a bear chasing you? What's going on? What were you trying to get away from? But think about that. What if I'm jogging and there's a bear on the trail and it chases me? What's going to happen? I'm hoping I'm going to run even faster. I don't know. I don't think I would try to take on the bear. But I'm going to be operating down here. The fear, the flight, the freeze is going to kick in. If you want to watch a good TED Talk on adverse childhood experiences, there's one by Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris. She uses that example, and she takes it a step farther. What happens if it's just not a unique event that there's a bear? But what happens if the bear comes home to you every night? And you got somebody abusing you or neglecting you, not meeting your needs. And you're constantly operating down here on this amygdala. You're hypervigilant. You're in a hyper-arousal state where you're like, okay, where's it coming from? What's going to happen? All of that. So if I run, and again, we know I don't, but if I did, my legs would get stronger, right? My muscles would get bigger. When we operate down here so much, it becomes our go-to. So when somebody bumps me in class, instead of saying, excuse me, I punch them. Because I'm operating down here. I don't have the logic skills, plus I'm surviving. I'm operating on that survival part of the brain. So the brain is also said to have upstairs and downstairs part, if you want to think about it kind of a little differently. The downstairs part is what develops first. It has a hierarchical structure of development. So this is going to be all of your body functions again, your fear, your flight, freeze, that amygdala. All of that's going to be down here in that part of the brain. Allows us to act before we think. And again, the upstairs brain, it's going to be a little longer before that develops, but that's what allows us to actually think before we act, to help us with decision making, to help give us more of the self-awareness, and to help give us more empathy. So when we start to look at trauma and toxic stress, that kind of stuff, it affects that development of the brain. And when I talk about toxic stress and trauma, we all have traumas all of the time. We all have things that happen and we all have stress. So for example, I don't know, it could have been stressful for me to get up here and talk today. It doesn't bother me, but it could have been stressful. So So somebody for public speaking can make them anxious, like their heart could start beating faster, they might get a little flushed, you know, all of that kind of stuff. Maybe going into the first day of a class. That's what we consider positive stress. You know, the first day of work. It's stress that we have, but we've got buffers, there's protective factor stuff going on, we have a support system. And then you go into, there's another level of stress where maybe we've lost a loved one, we've lost a pet, you know, we could be going through a divorce, stuff like that. That's still considered normal stress, and it's pretty much time-oriented. And we've still got protective factors, all of that kind of stuff. The toxic stuff that really does the most damage is when we get into stuff that's prolonged. It just keeps happening. So the child abuse, the neglect, you know, all of that stuff, it just keeps happening. There's no buffers, there's no protective factors, there's nobody that you feel like you could actually turn to, domestic violence, all of that kind of stuff. So thinking about, you know, what that does to the brain, you know, especially when you think about kids. And we know there's critical years in brain development, but the good news is the brain is very much plastic. And even kids who come into care, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 13, 14, we can still help to connect with them, right? We can still help to build new pathways in the brain, you know, all of that kind of stuff. So there's still, you know, a lot of hope in working with those. The other thing to think about, and I would say, you know, think about this as well with adults. I do it a lot with trauma in kids, thinking about how someone is a certain age chronologically. So you may have a 14-year-old chronologically. You may have a 25-year-old chronologically adult-wise. If they have experienced a lot of trauma, the general rule of thumb is to half that chronological age, and that is their developmental age. So if you went from working with a 14-year-old teenager who could probably be about the size of you to working with somebody who's about 7 developmentally. Half that again, and that is where they are functioning emotionally. So now you've got a toddler. So when you start to look at it in that perspective and look at behaviors, we can start to better understand the actually why behind the behaviors. And I personally think all behaviors, for the most part, are unmet needs. And people don't necessarily know how to communicate that need. And research tells us if we can meet the actual need, 84% of time, the behavior will go away. So being able to actually meet those needs. So when I work with my teachers and they're like, you know, I've got this 8-year-old and he just will not do this and he's always running around and all of that, you know, we start to look at, you know, what actually happened to that child, where'd that child come from, what's their experiences, and all of that kind of stuff. And then it starts to shape how we view things. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of an overview with TBRI and how that can help with relationships, because the foundation of TBRI is connection. So TBRI is a holistic approach. It is used a lot with kids from the Institute at Texas, we'll call it Kids from Hard Places, who've experienced trauma. But I think it's also very useful in working with adults, with any relationship, and with really any kid. Whether anybody's experienced trauma or not, it just helps to build that connection. And how can you go wrong with relationships? And really building that. It is very much a holistic approach, and it's one of the few approaches that takes into account the whole child. So looking at what actually happened to the child and thinking about it as well from what happened to that child in utero. There's so much stuff that can happen in utero that has an effect on that child that the child actually, you know, didn't have a say in, right? So when you think about stress, for example, cortisol levels in the mother, if they're high, they can be high up to 4 months later in a baby. All of that goes through that bloodstream. You know, thinking about alcohol, substance use, all of that kind of stuff. You know, if you've never worked with a child that has fetal alcohol syndrome, it can be horrific. That is one of the most preventable things we have here. And yet you still have a lot of gynecologists and stuff like that, OBGYNs, that will say it's okay to have a drink every once in a while. When in reality, we don't know research-wise at what point it's too much and at what point it's too late to have the drink. Does that make sense? Or too early to have the drink. So why drink? So thinking about, you know, all of that kind of stuff. So this gets into a lot of stuff with caregiving, very attachment focused. So thinking about, from an attachment perspective, you have a baby cries. I go in, okay, what do you need, baby? Do we need a diaper change? Do we need a bottle? You just need mommy to hold you? What's going on? I meet the need. The baby's nervous system, all of that, calms back down until about 2 hours later, depending on the age of the baby, we start the whole process again. The baby doesn't have the ability to go get his milk and change his diaper or to be able to calm himself at that point. So us, an adult, has to help self-regulate. You think about it, you get up into the toddler ages and you're co-regulating and still teaching those self-regulation skills. So, thinking about some of the stuff we do early on, maybe some of the stuff we actually need to carry a little farther as far as where kids come from and how we work with them. So TBRI is used all over the place, internationally, nationally. It's in some orphanages internationally, home, schools, camp, residential facilities. I'm doing some of daycares. Like I said, I'm in school systems here locally in our county, both public and private. I was at the Rock over the summer doing in-service trainings there as well. It is good for a child of any age and regardless of where they come from. It's just very much a more positive, mindful approach to parenting. And we will hold it's called Empowered to Connect. That'll be coming up in April of next year. So 5th and 6th. And if anybody wants more information about that, I'm still working on securing a location, but it is a simulcast that focuses on 2 days of TBRI. It is out of Texas Christian University, and then there's an organization called Show Hope that actually pushes it out. Last year we had about 153 folks come. We do free childcare in it as well, so if you've got kiddos, you can bring them. And the cost, I think last year was $25, and that included 2 days of lunches as well. Yeah, so it's relatively affordable. I helped to sponsor a big chunk of it from UF, and then work with local practitioners, Alicia Failer, who's our local TBRI practitioner, and then we've got a group that helps with that as well. So it's changing the view versus what's wrong with you to what happened to you. And when you start to change how you look at things, it's going to change how you react to things. So instead of saying, why on earth did you do that? What is wrong with you? You're taking that pause, you're stepping back, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, you've been through all of this. This is why you're doing this. How can I help you? What are the needs here that I can help to put in place? So specifically, when you're thinking about it from adult-child behavior, is that child truly acting out of willful disobedience? They really just want to make your life a nightmare, and they're just doing this to, poke the bear or whatever you want to call it. Or is it truly a survival behavior? So if you got a kid from a hard place, it's generally a survival behavior. If you have a kid who has not experienced any trauma at all, it's probably developmentally appropriate how they're acting for the most part. It's still probably not willful disobedience. We need to learn and teach and work in that playful environment and everything. So with TBR, you have connecting, you have empowering, and you have correcting. So when I talk to folks about this, they generally tell me they spend a big part of their time correcting. Don't do this, don't do that, come here, do this. No, don't hit your sister, sit down, we've got to eat dinner, come to the table. And what did we say? We may have about 2 to 3 hours at home with kids at night. So if I'm doing all my time doing that, when do I have time to connect with them? Because I'm also empowering. I've got to feed them and all of that kind of stuff. When do I got time to connect with them? If all my time is spent down here. So TBRI actually flips the model of that. We focus on connection, and I'm probably going to let some behaviors go because I'm going to be connecting with that child. And I also tell teachers that what happens at school stays at school, kind of like Vegas. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Yes, I want to know about behaviors, and yes, I'm going to work on the behaviors at home. No, I'm not going to punish a child at home for something that happened at school. We know when we actually do have to correct, it needs to be immediate, within 3 seconds or less, for it to actually make a difference with kids. And it needs to be done in a fun, playful way. We don't need to make, say, a mountain out of a molehill. We need to use just the most way to correct it that we have to, just to move on and get past it. I'm also not going to take and say, okay, Johnny did this on Monday, well, you gotta stay home all weekend and can't go to your soccer game on Saturday. Monday to Saturday is a very long time. There is no connection between that behavior and what's actually occurring there. So some of this, is knowing the brain, very positive parenting approach that's done through offering choices, redirections, redos. Kids learn great when they redo something. And, phrasing stuff. If I tell you, don't run down the hallway, well, what should you do? And how should I assume that you actually know what you should be doing? Has anybody ever told you that we should walk? Or how we should walk? So we don't give a lot of direction. We do a lot of, don't do this, don't do that, but, what should we actually do? So I do travel the state doing this kind of stuff and go to schools and all of that as part of my job at UF. So if anybody has any areas, I work with churches, all of that, I'm happy to come do a whole spiel on TBRI.